Fisherman help starving widow and her 3 kids. What happened next will haunt you forever. In the small town of Harrow's Bend, whispers of fate and dark mystery simmered thick in the murky air. It started with a fisherman, old and rugged, known in local lore as Jonah, casting his net by the gloomy, misty shore. On one fateful day, his eyes caught a woman, gaunt and desperate, kneeling by the water's edge, her 3 children clinging to her shadows like lost souls. She was the widow. The town had seen her struggle, her children's skeletal limbs barely clinging to life, their cheeks sunken, eyes wide with fear. As the sun hung low, casting eerie reflections on the water, Jonah felt a deep pull, an urge he could not ignore. Something dark lingered beneath the surface, beckoning to him, a sense of urgency tightening his chest. It was as if the tide shifted, swirling around them, a magic both frightening and familiar. He approached her, the brittle wind whispering secrets of the waves. The moment their eyes met, a chill ran through him. Her gaze was not just desperate, it bore a weight of sorrow that felt like a leaden anchor in his gut. The townsfolk watched from a distance, murmurs spreading like wildfire. What will he do? Can he save them? Hard faces turned soft with worry, others squinted with suspicion. Then came the inexplicable. The moment Jonah extended his weathered hand, the air crackled as if charged with electricity. The sky darkened, clouds roiling as if nature itself held its breath. Was it mere coincidence, or was there something sinister at play? Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, the fisherman pulled the widow to her feet. Relief flickered in their eyes, but it hung by a thread. Something unspoken lingered. The children eyed him warily, clutching each other, sensing the change like animals on alert. Jonah felt a rush through his veins, yet unease blossomed within him. A piece of him understood that this was just beginning. With a sudden splash, something surged under the water, a shadow too large to be a fish, too sinister to be ignored. Jonah froze, heart racing. The townsfolk gasped, disbelief wrapping around them like a shroud. What was that? Someone whispered, barely breaking the stunned silence. The widow's expression shifted, fear morphing into dawning realization. You've brought it here, she whispered, almost inaudibly, her words slicing through the tension. An icy dread filled the air, sweeping through Jonah like an unwanted tide. What had he awakened? What darkness had he unwittingly invited into their lives? The children's faces turned pale as the echo of their mother's words hung in the air, unanswered and chilling. The twilight deepened, and shadows seemed to stretch further, an ominous harbinger of events yet to unfold. Jonah's breath quickened. The widow's words hung over him like a dense fog, wrapping tight around his chest. He cast a glance toward the water, the murky depths swirling with ominous intent. Shadows danced beneath the surface, shifting and writhing, as if mocking his desperation. What had he really done? As he stood frozen, the children clung tighter to their mother, their innocent eyes wide with fear. They sensed it, too, the dark presence lurking just beneath the water's facade. The townsfolk began to murmur again, voices rising and falling like waves crashing against the shore. He shouldn't have intervened, one elder hissed. You can't meddle with forces you don't understand. Maybe it's a blessing, another countered, yet their eyes brimmed with doubt. Jonah shook his head, trying to dispel the growing dread. He had only wanted to help. But as he met the widow's gaze again, he found no gratitude there, only a flicker of something more profound, something ancient. Suddenly, a monstrous splash erupted from the depths, sending icy water spraying into the air. A giant, serpent-like creature breached the surface, its scales shimmering like polished obsidian under the dimming light. Agonizing roars and guttural cries erupted from its throat, a sound that felt wrong, like nails scraping across glass. Jonah staggered back, hand instinctively reaching for his fishing knife, but his feet felt glued to the ground. The townsfolk screamed, scrambling away, desperate to flee from the horror that had materialized before them. The children whimpered, backs pressed against their mother's thin frame. "Make it go away." The youngest cried out, voice trembling, yet it was the widow who held her ground, eyes locked onto the creature, a resigned strength emerging from her frail demeanor. "I've seen it before," she whispered, the words barely breaking through the rising storm. "It comes for blood. For debts unpaid." Jonah shivered, her words twisting in his mind like a dark vine. "What do you mean? What debt?" His voice trembled as the creature's gaze fell upon him, eyes like burning coal-hungry eyes. A flash of recognition dawned on her face. "You've interfered with fate, and now it demands a price," she breathed, horror taking root in Jonah's soul. He felt the weight of the moment, the realization crashing like thunder against the backdrop of his thoughts. The creature's presence grew heavy, a palpable darkness enveloping them. Jonah could taste the salt of fear on his tongue. He staggered backward, desperate for salvation. "No. I didn't mean to. I only wanted to help." But the creature advanced slowly, almost languidly, as if savoring the fear that wrung out of Jonah's heart. Then, amid Jonah's panic, a flicker of hope burst forth. "We can make a bargain," he shouted, regret already rolling in like waves, drowning the hope he had just clung to. "What are you willing to sacrifice?" The widow questioned, her eyes narrowing, flaring with an undeniable edge. The creature loomed closer, its maw opening wider, sharp teeth reflecting the dim light like daggers. Desperation ignited in Jonah's chest as the people around him gasped, whispers of his impending doom filling the air. "I'll do anything," he implored, voice cracking. But would this bargain save them, or seal their fates even tighter? Silence fell, a thick fog wrapping around the group as dread settled deeply in their bones. In that moment, Jonah would have to confront the darkest parts of himself and maybe even the ghosts of his own past. But before he could utter another word, the water shimmered ominously, revealing what he truly needed to sacrifice. The question loomed heavy in the air, and Jonah realized, some debts were more personal and terrifying than a deal with the dark. What price would he pay to save them all? As the creature made its move, only one thing became clear: Jonah's decisions would reverberate through time and haunt the town of Harrow's Bend forever. Jonah's heart raced as the creature loomed closer, its scales glistening in the dim light, a grotesque reflection of his own mounting terror. The air grew thicker, almost suffocating as the townsfolk stood like ghostly statues, fear frozen on their faces. They knew something terrible was about to unfold, but Jonah's own horror eclipsed them all. "What can you give?" the widow challenged, her voice seeping through the chaos. "Can you offer your comfort, your life, or perhaps something far more sacred?" Jonah's mind scrambled. Memories flashed: his father's laughter, his mother's gentle touch, and the warmth of a summer evening spent fishing. Would he really gamble all that away? The weight pressed down on him, the eyes of the creature burning with insatiable hunger, pulling at the shreds of his resolve. I'll give my hands," he cried out, desperation fueling his words. "My arms, I need them to fish. I'll sacrifice my strength." The townsfolk gasped, some murmuring prayers under their breath, while others recoiled in horror at the thought of Jonah mutilating himself in a futile attempt to save them, but the creature only tilted its head, as if pondering his offer with cruel delight. Jonah swallowed hard, his throat dry as sand. Would a mere sacrifice of limbs be enough? Or was this a game far beyond his understanding? "No," the widow snapped, shaking her head, panic surfacing in her voice. "The price is too small, Jonah. It won't quell its thirst." Jonah's thoughts spun. What if he offered more? "I could give up my home. The land I grew up on, the very ground I walk." The heavens above darkened with ominous clouds, their rumbling cascaded into the air, thick with foreboding, the serpent's maw crackled with energy, a wave of darkness enveloping Jonah, whispering promises and threats. "It comes for a soul," the widow murmured, a pallor spreading across her face, threatening to eclipse the flicker of hope. "Your soul?" Jonah echoed, the weight of her words crashing over him like a tidal wave. "I can't sacrifice my soul." "Then what?" she pleaded, her eyes sparkling with fear. "They will pay the price too. You are not their savior, Jonah. Run while you still can." But running wasn't an option anymore. The creature's head darted toward the widow, its dark eyes locked onto her like a hawk to its prey. It was an ancient force, and Jonah's actions had roused it from its slumber. He had only wanted to help a widow and her children, and now the stakes were far too high. "No!" Jonah shouted, a surge of sudden clarity flooding through him. "I'll save them. I'll protect them. The ground shook, a low growl vibrating through the air. The townsfolk began to murmur frantically, urging Jonah to reconsider. But it was too late. Jonah stepped forward, his chest aimed at the terrible creature, and in that moment, a flicker of determination ignited. "I will trade my soul, but there's a price I will not pay lightly." The words felt liberating as they left his lips, the wind carrying away his fear. As he spoke, the air crackled with a charged energy, an unsteady balance tilting dangerously towards chaos. The serpent paused, calculating, intrigued. The townsfolk gasped in unison, a collective intake of breath hanging in the air. Then Jonah remembered those whispered stories of old. The townsfolk spoke of a creature beneath the water, but they never spoke of the bargain that could turn the tide, the burdensome price laden with sacrifice and consequences. But what was at stake was no longer just his soul, it was the souls of Harrow's Bend, the very lifeblood of a town unaware of its heart's deep-rooted troubles. As silence enveloped the gathering, Jonah braced himself. The choice loomed, and with it, the realization that he might just unleash a wrath far greater than any of them could predict. What would the creature demand for the peace of the town? And could he truly save them all without losing everything? The air crackled, tension swirled like smoke, and Jonah felt time stretching waiting for the fateful answer. The creature's eyes flared with a pale light, as if the depths of its ancient hunger had just found sustenance in Jonah's defiance. A low hiss erupted from its throat, vibrating through the ground like the tolling of a distant bell. The townsfolk flinched, their bodies trembling as the very fabric of reality warped around them. "Your soul," the creature's voice slithered through the air like smoke, each word dripping with malice, "it is but the beginning." Jonah's stomach twisted. He had heard stories of ancient pacts, of souls traded in the dark for fleeting moments of light. He felt the creeping fingers of dread curling around his heart. "What do you want?" Jonah barely managed to whisper, a lump forming in his throat as he faced the creature this primordial horror. "Sacrifice," it replied, each syllable echoing through the gathered crowd, causing ripples of fear and confusion. "You seek to save the weak, to protect the fragile. The price is a mirror to your intent, life for life, blood for blood." Jonah's pulse thundered in his ears. The widow stepped closer, her hand reaching out as if she could shield him from the impending storm. "Jonah, don't listen. It's a trick. Please." Her voice cracked under the weight of helplessness, yet there was resolve in her eyes, but Jonah was ensnared now, trapped in a web of his own making. "If I must sacrifice, then let it be my life. Just take me, spare them." A violent wind swept through the clearing, rustling the leaves, throwing dust into the air, a chaotic, raging tempest screaming for release. "Foolish boy." The creature's forceful laughter resonated around them, like shadows mocking light. "Your life has little value without the price of sacrifice. You offer yourself willingly, yet what will you trade to keep your loved ones safe?" The widow gasped, "No. Jonah, don't," but her voice was drowned in the cacophony of his internal conflict. A flicker of resolve ignited within him. His town had always told stories of sacrifice meaning something greater. "What if I give you my memories?" he blurted, desperate for a lifeline. "Take them. Everything, my childhood, my home, the bonds I've formed. Just let them live. The serpent paused, its gaze piercing, evaluating this new offering. A low rumble rolled through the ground, as the townsfolk leaned in, confusion mingling with curiosity. The widow shook her head. Jonah, stop. You can't lose who you are. Jonah turned to her, desperation etched on his face. What good is my life if I can't protect what matters? The creature's grin widened, exposing rows of razor-sharp teeth. Intriguing, it mused, contemplating. Memories, indeed, are powerful currency. Will it suffice? Or will your foolish heart waver in the end? Jonah felt the weight of uncertainty wash over him, a swirling torrent of emotion, the fear of losing everything he had known clashing against the hope of saving innocent lives. Choose, Jonah. The creature hungers. The townsfolk's hushed murmurs rose to a fearful clamoring as they sensed the impending storm. Suddenly, a crack of thunder rumbled overhead, the skies flashing an angry shade of purple as if resonating with his turmoil. The ground quaked again, shifting beneath their feet. Jonah clenched his fists. This was a battle with no easy answers. The creature leaned closer, its breath hot and suffocating, entwined with the scent of rotting seaweed. Do you dare commit such an act? Life for life, sacrifice for peace? Or will your memories swirl into nothingness, like faded echoes lost in the dark? Jonah's mind raced, the blink of an eye stretching into eternity. What should have been a moment of clarity felt like a freefall into the chaos of cost and consequence, leaving him hollowed and exposed. Yet somewhere deep inside, past the storm and worry, a flicker of hope remained. Could memories truly be a fair price? What would it feel like to forget? What would happen to the widow and her children if he did surrender his past? With the creature's relentless gaze locked upon him, Jonah felt his breath hitch. Was he truly ready to barter his very essence for the lives of others? Time's running out, Jonah, the creature hissed, the town's silence thick with trepidation, and yet, beyond the shadows, a haunting whisper echoed, what will you trade? The answer hung suspended in the air, charged with anticipation, waiting to be unleashed. Jonah's heart pounded like a drum, a wild rhythm against the clamor of his thoughts. The creature was a storm himself, swirling with darkness and hunger. Jonah didn't want to lose himself, but the thought of leaving the widow and her children behind was unbearable. He could almost feel their small hands reaching for him, their innocent trust pinned to this moment. What if he failed them? Your memories, they shape you, the creature taunted. Are you truly prepared to erase the very essence of who you are? Time stretched and warped, twisted like the shadows dancing at the edges of the clearing. Jonah's mind raced, grappled with the reality of his sacrifice. What would he be without family stories, laughter, his first love, the struggles that made him who he was? And yet, the wind howled louder, almost mocking his indecision. I will do it. Jonah finally shouted, trying to drown out the creature's influence. I will trade everything. Hold on, Jonah. The widow cried, her eyes wide with terror. Think about it. You'll be nothing. A ghost in your own life. Her words cut deep, but the desperation gripping Jonah was more potent. He focused on the sight of her children, her son's tear-streaked face, her daughter's small frame trembling with fear. I'd rather be a ghost than watch them suffer. He yelled, steeling himself against the creature's mocking grin. The serpent's laughter echoed like thunder, seeping into the very soil beneath them. Foolish boy indeed, it hissed. What will you give? Speak your trade. Take my memories. Jonah shouted, his voice breaking, but firm. I don't care. Just let them live. The serpent's eyes gleamed, a forbidden allure dancing in their depths. You propose to barter a lifetime for fleeting breaths of survival? Very well. Let us see if you can fulfill your promise. A surge of energy crackled in the air, and Jonah felt a tingle of pain, sharp and immediate, as though a frigid hand pierced through his mind. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Memories began to drift, floating away like clouds scattered by the wind. He reached back, desperately trying to grasp them. His childhood laughter faded, a ghostly echo. The warmth of summer picnics with his friends slipped further into the ether. Faces of loved ones softened and blurred until he was left gasping for breath, fighting against the tidal wave of forgetting. Stop. Don't take them. Please. Jonah cried out, feeling more lost with each passing moment. Too late. The creature's voice boomed, and black tendrils began to engulf him, wrapping around his mind like ivy suffocating an ancient tree that he felt the weight of the world lift from his shoulders, but it was replaced by an emptiness so profound it sent shivers down his spine. Your trade is made. Your memories are mine, the creature declared, lifting its claws as if in victory. Now, begone. The townsfolk gasped, confusion mingling with horror. A few stumbled back, eyes wide, unable to comprehend the scene unfolding before them. As Jonah's vision blurred and darkened, he felt a profound loneliness wrapping around his heart. No. He fought to hold on to just one memory, anything, but it was too slippery, too fragile. The last breath of a smile, the echo of a friend's laugh, the warmth of home. Gone. The shadow retreated, leaving Jonah standing there, hollowed out, eyes vacant and searching for what he could no longer grasp. As silence fell heavy over the clearing, Jonah staggered back, a mere shell of the man he'd once been. He gazed at the townsfolk, their faces a mix of concern and fear, but his own heart was void of emotion, and then, from the other side of the clearing, the widow stepped forward, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jonah? What happened? But she didn't receive an answer. Only Jonah, lost in a world stripped of all color. Did you gain a peace that now eludes you? The creature's whisper slithered back, lingering in the air. Or have you merely traded your past for a future void of connection? Jonah's eyes flickered, shadows of recognition glimmering momentarily before they faded into nothing. Surrounded by fear, emptiness loomed large, and yet the ghost of hope fluttered a silent promise just beyond his reach. What would he do now, utterly blank yet seething with dread? The townsfolk looked at each other in confusion, unknowing of what would happen next. Who were they to trust? Who could save them now, if they were all bound in this web of shadows? In the distance, thunder crackled once again, the dark skies swirling ominously overhead, signaling that the night was far from over. Jonah's gaze drifted, unfocused, as if he were peering through a veil of mist. Every sound felt muted, distant, like whispers and cries trapped somewhere far beneath an ocean of despair. The widow stood before him, her features etched with worry, but all Jonah could see was an emptiness, a gaping void where warmth and affection should have nestled. Jonah, she breathed, her voice trembling. Please, answer me. But he couldn't. All the words he had gathered over a lifetime lay scattered around him like fragile leaves caught in a storm. He couldn't even find the strength to form a reply. Instead, he took a step back, and the townsfolk shuffled uneasily, unsure what to make of this ghost who walked among them. What happened to him? Someone murmured from the crowd. He traded away his life for those kids, but what if he lost everything? That sentiment rippled through the gathering like a chilling breeze, stirring echoes of doubt. Jonah's heart faltered at their fear. They didn't understand. They couldn't possibly grasp the gravity of the choice he had made. Not a single person could fathom how it felt to stand between life and death, hope and desperation. Jonah, the widow implored again, stepping closer, her small children clinging to her skirts, wide-eyed and frightened. Look at me. Come back. I need you. The word need echoed through his hollow soul, a haunting specter of the life he once cherished. He wanted to scream, to cry out, but instead he felt only the lingering tendrils of the creature's darkness trailing through his mind. Leave him be, the serpent's voice dripped with malice, slithering through Jonah's thoughts like cold steel. He is what I've made him, fragile and forgotten. A work of art, painted in the shade of despair. No. Jonah's voice cracked, a shard of resolve stirring somewhere deep inside him. I remember, but the words slipped away before he could catch them. A flicker of anger ignited, a spark against the encroaching shadows. He fought against the darkness, yearning for even a flicker of his past. Maybe it was too late for him, maybe he would never find his way back, but those children, he had to do something for them. In a Herculean effort, he raised his head, trying to find purpose in their frightened faces. It hurt to see them, to know he couldn't promise them a safe tomorrow. But even in his hollow state, one thought remained clear: he wouldn't allow them to be consumed by the darkness. "What do you want?" he shouted into the heavy night air. "What must I do?" The creature's laughter swirled above his words, sharp and echoing. "Do you truly wish to fight me, boy? You are an empty vessel, nothing for me to claim, nothing for you to give." Thunder crackled above, louder this time, turbulent clouds swirling together like an unrelenting tempest. The widow looked around, sensing the impending chaos. "Jonah!" she cried, desperation mingled with a newfound hope in her voice. "You have to remember something. Please." And then, he felt it. A flicker, a beat, a whisper from deep within the recesses of his mind. The laughter of a child. The scent of rain on hot asphalt. The embrace of a mother's warmth. Could those fleeting memories be salvaged? Focus. He urged himself, digging through the rubble of his lost past. Images raced through his eyes, each one sharper than the last. Voices became clear, tones of endearment that felt like family. He didn't know how it was possible, but he could still fight. With every fragment he clung to, he felt an unexpected warmth beginning to seep back into his hollow shell. "I won't let you take anything else from me." Jonah roared, defiance ringing through the air. The creature hissed, the shadows recoiling. "You dare challenge your own nothingness? Very well, then. Let's see what a ghost can do. What will you sacrifice to truly remember?" Jonah glanced at the widow, holding her children close, their eyes shining bright with fear and love. Something inside him shifted. He felt a surge of power, the belief that connection meant more than memories, it was the bond they shared. In that moment, he understood. If he was to fight, he wouldn't be alone. But was it enough? As lightning split the sky, illuminating the shadows of his despair, Jonah felt the weight of his past pressing against him. He stood on the precipice of his own fate, heart racing as he chose to embrace the fight for those he'd lost and those he had yet to save, but in the distance, a whisper echoed through the thunder: "Are you ready for what comes next, Jonah? The storm is just beginning." A fresh wave of unease washed over him, tightening the grip of uncertainty. What would he have to endure to reclaim his memories? And were the consequences more than he could bear? Jonah's pulse quickened, each beat thundering in his ears as if the storm itself were a part of him. With the widow's desperate gaze piercing through the twilight, he knew he stood at a crossroads. The creature's presence loomed, an all-consuming shadow threatening to swallow him whole, yet there was a flicker of resolve igniting something deep inside. "What will you sacrifice?" the creature's voice whispered, slithering around him, wrapping him in its malevolent embrace. Jonah cut through the chilling tension like lightning cleaving the dark sky. "I'll sacrifice everything for them," he declared, feeling the weight of hope in his chest. The ground beneath him trembled, shifting as if reacting to his declaration. "Then let us see what that truly means," the creature hissed, its voice an echo of malice and mirth. Suddenly, the world around Jonah shifted. The crowd that had gathered started to waver, their faces fading into mist. He felt himself being pulled into a different realm, one tangled in nightmares and hidden truths. The widow's frantic pleas reached him through the void, but he was losing connection with her. "Jonah! Fight!" Her voice struggled against a tide of fear. Jonah stretched out a hand, sensing the distance between them stretch on into eternity. "I'm coming." The shadows tried to drown out his words, devouring his voice as he fought against whatever darkness had snatched him away. As he succumbed to the weight of despair, vivid memories swirled around him like a dark eddy, a lush green yard where laughter echoed, and the sun shone brighter than any treasure, the playful splashes of children at the riverbank, their innocent joy lighting the air. He glimpsed a warmth that felt so far away, and for an instant, he was tethered, truly tethered to something real. In that moment, as colors twisted together like a storm, he remembered the greatest truth of all, love. It erupted within him like fire, fueling his resistance. I am not nothing. I am Jonah. The creature's laughter turned shrill, rippling through the air, mixing with the wind. You think love is enough to save you? Love does not protect against the darkness. With each pulse of his soul, memories surged. He saw the children of the widow, how they played together under the golden sun. He envisioned their giggles, their sticky fingers grabbing at sweet treats, their little feet scampering down the dusty roads of the town. It filled him with light, a light that could pierce through the thick shroud of shadows. Driven by that intensity, he felt his voice rise, calling out into the abyss with clear purpose. I don't fight alone. Around him, the swirling mist began to clear. Suddenly, the widow and her children formed before him, images rising from the fog. Their faces filled with hope, forcing the darkness to waver. Jonah, please. They urged, leaning into his light. But the creature screamed in fury, you cannot escape your fate. I own you. An overwhelming weight pressed against Jonah's chest, and he felt the blur of shadows converge upon him, drawing nearer. The energy was almost palpable, and he could feel the edges of his consciousness fraying. No! He shouted, clenching his fists tightly. I choose to fight with my heart. I won't let you take them. The thunder cracked louder, spitting angry bolts of light that sliced through the clouds, illuminating the faces of the townsfolk. Cheers rose faintly from the crowd as they sensed the flicker of hope reigniting. But just then, the ground trembled violently. Jonah barely steadied himself, eyes wide as a chasm opened before him, dark and hungry. What will you give me for their lives? The serpent's voice dripped with venomous sweetness, its presence intensifying as it hovered in the air, waiting for Jonah's response. Every heart in that gathering held its breath, locked in a moment of suspense. Jonah's mind raced, torn between the weight of sacrifice and the flicker of hope. Anything, he whispered, his voice shaking as he faced the rocky abyss. Very well, the creature purred, a cruel grin stretching across the shadows. Let the storm's dance begin. You may lose more than you thought. As the storm swirled violently around them, Jonah feared what he had unleashed. The town held its breath, and in that moment, he realized, this struggle was just the beginning. What awaited him on the other side of sacrifice? With a shuddering heart, he stepped forward, drawn into the yawning abyss. The world exploded, enveloping them in shadows, not knowing if he would emerge whole or lost forever. As Jonah plunged into the abyss, the darkness consumed him. It felt like a scream trapped inside his chest, the air around him thick and choking. Where was he? What awaited him here? Flashes of light danced in the void, vibrant visions pushing through the turmoil like trapped fireflies, each one trapped yet yearning to break free. He gasped, the chill of the shadows wrapping tightly around him. But then, a flicker of warmth ignited deep within, fueled by the love for the widow and her children. He steadied himself against the ever-shifting darkness, focused on the memories, each upward tug, each giggle, each moment of fleeting joy giving him strength. Suddenly, the void transformed. Shapes warped and twisted, revealing fragmented scenes from the town he had fought to protect. People stood frozen in time, their faces contorted in terror and disbelief. A young man cried out, his eyes wild. A child clutched a toy, looking for his mother in a frozen panic. Jonah! A desperate voice echoed, and he turned to see the widow, her ethereal form barely illuminated by a flicker of light. She appeared stretched thin, like a fragile thread ready to snap. Help us. Please. But the shadows threatened to devour her, their long tendrils reaching like grotesque hands. Jonah felt the urge to leap forward, to save her, but the immense darkness anchored him down. "I'm trying," he shouted, straining against the oppressive weight. "What will you sacrifice?" The creature's mocking tone reverberated through the gloom. It materialized before him, shifting and swirling, a shape both alluring and horrifying. Its eyes glinted with wicked interest. "Will you give more than you comprehend?" "I'd give anything." Jonah bit back, his voice hoarse, each word laced with desperation. The ground beneath him quaked again with the force of his defiance, and the shadows recoiled slightly, but their grasp tightened around the widow. "Then let us test that resolve." The creature snapped a finger, and Jonah felt a jolt run through him. Pain erupted in his chest as if his heart had split apart. It seared, burning through the fog of shadows until a piercing light erupted. He fell to his knees, struggling to exchange agony for freedom. "Feel the sacrifice." The beast spat, its laugh echoing like popping balloons. Jonah gasped, clenching his teeth against the pain. The widow's voice broke through the cacophony. "Jonah, remember. The love you carry, it can pierce the darkest night." With her words, the jolt transformed into a surge. Pictures of the children emerged once more, their innocent smiles shining bright, fueling Jonah's courage. But the dark smog pressed in again. The agony intensified, slicing through to his very soul. As Jonah closed his eyes, images of the widow flashed in a rapid whirl, her laughter, the kind warmth she'd shown when he first met her, her hugs. Each memory ricocheted, forcing him to realize what mattered most. What was he willing to lose? "Enough!" he roared, his body igniting with newfound energy. "You won't take them from me." The shadows recoiled, twisting and unraveling around him. There was a heartbeat, a connection resonating with the widow and her kids. He felt the space grow, pushing against the weight of the darkness. In a defiant scream, Jonah thrust his hands forward, channeling every ounce of love and sacrifice into a blinding light that surged like a tidal wave. The darkness shivered, hesitated, then screamed as the brightness surged forth, bursting through the void, but just as hope surged, the shadows reshaped themselves, twisting with malevolence. The creature roared, furious and desperate, "You think this is over?" As the storm echoed with his challenge, Jonah dimmed, losing sight of his surroundings. It was becoming harder to breathe as the light fought against the incoming tide of darkness. Was he winning, or had he just deepened his own fate? "Jonah!" The widow's voice strained against the tide, pulling him back. He could not let go. But as he staggered forward, the swirling abyss loomed, swallowing everything in its wake. What would it take to break free? He could feel the ground beneath him fade, and in that moment, his heart screamed out one final sacrifice. But would it cost him everything? The fabric of reality bent around him, and with a resounding crash, the illusion began to shatter like glass, revealing something unimaginable, something he could not yet understand. What was waiting to be uncovered as the darkness clashed against his light? What sacrifices would be laid bare before the dawn? Jonah felt the darkness unraveling, pieces of it fracturing like shattered glass. He was falling, spiraling into nothingness. Dread clutched at his insides while that blinding light pulsed in his heart, a beacon fighting for life in a graveyard of shadows. With a roar that drowned out the storm, he reached for the fragments of hope that floated around him, memories of laughter, joy, and love. They danced through the chaos, each moment a reminder of what he fought for. And then, in that endless tumble, something solid began to form beneath his feet. A beam of light shot from his chest, illuminating the darkness in swirling colors. He could feel it, the shadows recoiling from its brilliance, fear etched in their grotesque forms. It was then he saw it. A mirror, fractured and cracked, materializing in front of him. Reflected back were images of the widow and her children, but they weren't just frozen in time any longer. They were alive, small smiles lighting up their faces, their eyes bright with hope. Jonah's heart raced. The light he unleashed was resonating with their spirits. "Mom! The youngest shouted, the words piercing the heavy atmosphere. Jonah felt the tug of connection pulling him closer, each word slashing through the despair. Then the creature appeared again, ominous and dripping with malice. "This is a grave mistake," it hissed. The air around them thickened, trembling with its fury. "You want to save them, but will you sacrifice your very essence for their joy?" Jonah couldn't respond, but the truth bubbled up, calling out from within him. Yes. It wasn't merely a word, it was a promise. With each moment, he realized his sacrifice was not just for the widow, but for the lifelong scars etched in those children's futures. Then let us see how strong that resolve truly is. The creature lunged, shadows clawing through the air toward him, seeking to engulf his very being. The mirror cracked, fractures extending outward. A surge of darkness rushed around him, a tide that threatened to consume everything. But the widow's face, radiant in the light, anchored him. "We are one," she whispered, as if she were there beside him, weaving their destinies together. "Fight for love, Jonah. Fight for hope." In a single, desperate heartbeat, Jonah balanced on the precipice of light and darkness. As the shadows clawed at him, he unleashed a primal scream that echoed across the void. It was a raw sound, fueled by every moment of love he held for the widow and her children. Waves of white-hot energy pulsated from him, crashing into the shadows like a sun breaking through a storm. Jonah's body shuddered under the weight of conflict. With every ounce of strength, he reached into the depths of sorrow and began to pull forth that blinding light. It coursed through him with a fierce intensity, illuminating the dark corners of existence that had swallowed hope for far too long. The creature howled, shadows writhing as they were disintegrated by the power of Jonah's love. "You can't." Its voice dissolved into desperate screams. The abyss shook, walls vibrating, and the mirror shattered completely, sending shards of light scattering like stars across the darkness. Jonah felt himself rising. He was moving towards something bigger, something wholly beautiful, transcending dimensions beyond the shackles of despair. A warmth enveloped him, wrapping him in comfort and love, but just as he reached for the widow and the children, hands outstretched, he felt an ominous pull. Something within the depths of the void surged forward, a final attempt to reclaim its lost power. "We will see you again, Jonah," echoed a chilling voice, and an icy tendril wrapped around his ankle. What would come next? Had he truly broken free, or merely unlocked another level of darkness waiting on the other side? The warmth faded, leaving him suspended in an unsettling stillness. Just then, he noticed a thin tendril of shadow creeping back toward the bright warmth. Was it too late for him to save them all? A question loomed like a storm ready to break. In the depths of sacrifice and love, could he withstand the trial that awaited him? What horrors lay hidden in the depths as he struggled to bring them into the light? Jonah hung in the silence, frozen in a moment, stretched thin like an old fishing line barely holding against the weight of the sea. He felt the darkness clawing at him, but deeper still, that radiant warmth beckoned, a reminder that love, in its purest form, could burst through even the thickest shadows. He concentrated, letting the glimmers of joy and laughter sharpen around him. They weren't mere memories, they were a lifeline. With every heartbeat, he summoned what flickered in his heart, and echoing through his mind the widow's smile, the children's laughter, the warmth of community that held him steady. "Together," he roared, the words powerful against the void. "In love, we rise against the dark." The tendril tightened around his ankle, drawing closer, but he fought back, channeling the very essence of what it meant to be human. He focusing on those fleeting touches of joy that filled his days like beacons leading him home. Suddenly, like a lightning flash splitting the clouds, he drew forth the energy amassed within him. With a magnificent shout, he unleashed a vibrant burst of light, a shimmering tidal wave of love and warmth that swelled like the rising tide. The shadows recoiled in horror. Jonah surged forward with a fierce determination etched in his heart. The darkness writhed, twisting like a caged beast as the light expanded, breaking apart the tendrils that sought to reclaim him. He could see the widow and her children now, their faces illuminated beneath the gentle glow of his sacrifice. It was almost tangible, an ethereal connection that reached past despair and pulled them closer. "Hold on!" Jonah screamed, racing toward them, his heart pounding with purpose. As he rushed forth, the creature erupted in fury, its angry form blurring and crackling. "No! You are nothing!" it roared, shadows spiraling wildly around it, but Jonah's conviction drowned out the monster's words. "Love is everything!" he shouted back, pushing through the waves of dark energy with sheer will. With a final rush, he pierced through the veil separating light from dark, and in that moment, he felt an otherworldly burst, a culmination of sacrifice fueled by the purest love imaginable. With a resounding crash, the waves of light erupted, engulfing the churning blackness. It shimmered, enveloping the widow and children in a cocoon of warmth. For an instant, Jonah felt weightless, drifting through a haze of pulsing light that knitted their fates together. The darkness screamed, unraveling like a frayed thread. The illusion shattered, the power dissipating into nothingness. Jonah's heart soared. He could see it now. The townsfolk, the familiar faces of Harrow's Bend, all standing with light sparking in their eyes, united against despair. "Mommy!" cried the youngest child, and as the impact of that name rang clear, it felt as if chains of fear were breaking with each heartbeat, releasing warmth back into the world. With a final pulse of energy, the last remnants of darkness were cast away, leaving silence in its wake. Jonah blinked, struggling to catch his breath as he surveyed the scene. The townsfolk looked on, bewildered but alive, vibrant, and free from the lurking shadows that had threatened them. Then Jonah turned to the widow, her face softened by release and gratitude. He stepped toward her and slowly knelt by her side, coming eye to eye with her children, their little hands reaching for him as if touching a piece of magic. "Are you okay?" Jonah's voice trembled slightly, unsure if the act had cost him everything. But he felt the warmth of small fingers clasping his hand, innocence showering over his heart like rain. "Yes," she whispered, tears twinkling like sunlight on waves. "You saved us. You saved all of us." The shadows had retreated, but at what cost? Jonah's thoughts churned, desperate to grasp any memory of who he was before empty darkness threatened to sweep down on him. Yet standing there now, surrounded by love, he felt fragments returning, faces and moments stitching into the fabric of his existence, a past worth fighting for. He turned, surveying the crowd with a newfound resolve. Harrow's Bend was alive, filled with flickering spirits locked in a dance of hope. They stood tall, no longer merely watchers of the storm, but participants in the unfolding of a brighter narrative. "Together, we will remember," Jonah said firmly, conviction rooted deep in his heart. "Together, we will heal." The townsfolk murmured their agreement, understanding that shadows might linger but that love shone brighter. With the warmth of hope woven into their hearts, they began to gather, needing each other more than ever as the final remnants of fear faded. As darkness had once crashed upon them, they now welcomed the dawn, ready to build something beautiful above the echoes of despair. Jonah stood, grounded in this new dawn, a hopeful hero reborn from the ashes of sacrifice, a reminder that even in the darkest times, love is the brightest light. They would carry on, together, and rebuild as a community, walking hand in hand into the sunrise that painted their town with the colors of resilience. So, standing at the edge of that light, Jonah whispered softly, "We will remember," letting the warmth spill over him. He felt it all come back: love, laughter, the simple joy of being. And from that day forward, there would always be a thread connecting them all, the enduring promise of hope, lighting up even the darkest of times. Now, don't forget this powerful journey. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and flood the comments section with your reactions about this wild ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means the world to us. Show we're all in this together.